So we're here for the last match of the round of 16. We've got humans versus Pierru. Obviously, I know humans, Grandmaster, but I haven't heard or seen of Pierru before, so good luck to them. And hopefully they make a good count of themselves. Here they've got a Magmar deck, which they've titled Don't Play This. So we'll see if that gets played. And this Songhai spell spam. What do you think, Blatm?
I also didn't know them, and on ladder I only saw them playing Magmar, I think. So the Songhai deck might be one of those format things. It's like, it sort of counters the thing that counters the Magmar deck. It might also just be bait for people who don't know them and sort of game one pick a thing against the spell high deck, and they get a good matchup. But yeah, I'm definitely expecting them to be playing the Magmar deck. And this Magmar deck, it's another one of those pretty greedy Magmar decks. There's no Archons, but you've got 2 Elders. That's pretty noteworthy. You have 7 5-drops, 3/2/2 with the Zenruiz. The Zenruiz is definitely new to me, so that's interesting. And then really light on 2-drops, and also got Plasma Storm and Eggmorph over Metamorphosis. So definitely some everything in this deck is interesting. Right? Keeper is interesting. Hologrove Keeper is interesting. So definitely a deck that is clearly their own. That they played with a bunch, and they sort of tweaked the exact cards in it to find something that they personally think is really good, and that has been working for them.
Yeah, a decent amount of time when I see a deck light on 2-drops, but it's running 3 flash. I'm like, oh, what sweet 4-drops they ran that they can ramp out, but not in this case. Probably hoping to flash out some of their later game stuff instead, and maybe they're not so fussed about skipping turn 1. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite them in the ass.
It is kind of strange to see the Hollow Grove Keeper, but almost no 2-drops, because you're not going to really be able to make use of the provoke half of that.
Right.
Very much. But they played a ton with this deck, so I'm sure that it works for them and it's good. So I'm really excited to see how they do with it.
Yeah, and against them, Grandmaster Humans, they're running another creep player. Definitely seen quite a few of those. And this Twin Fang deck, which looks a bit similar to Jay's, but not quite so combo stall focused. It's just more of a mid-rangey stuff with a couple of Twin Fangs just for... it's a good card, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's absolutely just a way to win the game, and if the match is going that way, you can start moving towards that. So this whole archetype of the control-y, combo-y Twin Fang Magmar, it leads to a bunch of really interesting decks because there's so many intertwined game plans in these decks, and in construction you can decide you want to emphasize or de-emphasize certain game plans. So if you look at Jay's deck, for example, that's much more about the Twin Fang, right? It's going to win almost all of its games with Twin Fang. This Humans deck, it's mostly just a normal control Magmar deck, but it does, going to rely on Twin Fang a decent amount of the time, right? I mean, in particular, the 2 Mogwai and the 2 Silhouette Tracer, that's there specifically to connect with the Twin Fang. And these deck lists tend to be really, really, really tight. You're going to have to make some painful cuts. Here, Humans has only 2 Vindicators instead of 3, which is a really notable choice, right? They could have cut a 2-drop. They could have cut maybe an Archon. Jay plays 1/1 Mogwai Tracer, and it's tough because no matter what you cut, you really feel it. You really feel the inconsistency if you cut a 2-drop. There were games that Jay played where he ran out of his Mogwai and Tracer and had basically no way of connecting with his Twin Fang, etc. So it's really difficult to choose exactly how you're going to allocate your 39 deck slots in this archetype, and what game plans you want to emphasize versus which ones you want to be incidental.
Yeah, and as for the Abyssalisk, it's running a couple of Breath the Unborn and a single Grasp of Agony just to keep people on their toes, as well as these 2 Sojourners. Do you have any opinion on that? I mentioned earlier I kind of like it, but I'm just curious what you think.
Well, the Grasp is really nice. In an open decklist format, it would seem that grass would be less effective, because this is one of those cards where if your opponent knows for sure that you have it, then it becomes a lot less effective. It's not really like Macant or Holy Immolation, where it's still a really powerful card. It's, if your opponent plays around it perfectly, it's pretty mediocre. It's sort of maybe the worst card in the deck, but it's still good enough to run for sure. And it's one of those things where Humans is giving his opponent credit for being really good and saying, oh, this one grasp is going to impact your positioning enough that it's still going to be worth it for me to run it. And the tiebreaker for these sorts of decisions is often Demonic Lure, or sometimes Shadow Nova, where you can combo the grasp with other cards you have and get value out of it that way. So even if the opponent's playing around grasp perfectly, you're going to have at least one moment in the game where you can lure grasp and get it, get value out of it.
Yeah, it is funny how just it being an open deck list and playing around grasp a game can actually be enough of a small disadvantage to actually lose you the game.
It is tricky to play around perfectly. You really have to compromise your positioning quite a bit, and it is a very powerful card if you don't play around it. So
I'm gonna ask you again though, what do you think about Sojourner?
Oh yeah. Humans is a really good player, and I think that if he evaluates this card as good, that's absolutely something to take note of and to try and learn from. That's the most diplomatic way I can say it.
I'm surprised to see it in a slower deck like this, because I think it might have a little space in fast decks that run out of cards, which there aren't too many of those in 2-draw. It's pretty hard to run out of cards. But I think there will be decks that are I need a little bit more card draw, and I want a body that doesn't just die. I think Sojourner can have a role there, and sometimes it just sometimes it just draws you the ace. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's kind of interesting about Parallel Sojourner is, so I'm going to ask a question, and I think that, so the question is would it be more powerful if it were just draw a card from your deck instead of, draw any, random card in the game? And I think everyone's default answer to that is, yeah, of course it would be more powerful if it drew a card from your deck, right? Because the cards in your deck are more powerful than just a random card across the entire game. But Duelyst cards in general tend to be really strong if you don't play around them. So somehow having a card that's totally random, the opponent can't possibly predict, and so you're guaranteed basically your opponent is not going to be playing around it, that has its own value. So it's not so clear that it's even worse than just draw a card. Okay, it's probably worse than draw a card, but yeah, that's an interesting, it's not, that might be what Humans is thinking, that just having that way of messing with the opponent has value.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Most of the time it is worse than just drawing a card from your deck. But when it isn't, when it's better, it's usually a lot better. How are you going to play around this random artifact defiler or whatever? Wow, why does he have that? He really got it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's enough chat. Let's get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you got Humans Magmar against Pierru's Songhai. Let's go Songhai.
Yeah, so I was wrong. I thought that Pierru would be sticking to Magmar, but sees that Songhai is pretty good into both of Humans' decks. So,
well, that said, no opening play.
That's really unfortunate, because we saw so many games with a Magmar deck that was super, super, super greedy, and this one is running 12 2-drops, and it doesn't get a turn 1. That's tragic.
Well, the odds will get you eventually. I mean,
yeah. I think that overall this happens a bit less than 5% of the time, but that's certainly not never. And then this is brutal, right? This is this is sort of the last thing you want to see as Humans, because Tuskboar is just incredibly strong here. You can't even clear both. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, not ideal. I guess you still clear one off and double heal up.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not quite as bad as Tuskboar into Healing Mystic, where the Healing Mystic heals the Tuskboar and then they have a 2-3 left over. But
yeah, it can definitely depend on the matchup, right? If it's a really aggressive Songhai deck versus a really greedy Magmar deck. This is also going to be tough for Twin Fang, right? Because Twin Fang is just absolutely terrible into Blood Rage Mask, right? That's just not going to work. So you basically have to combo the Twin Fang, and that's really difficult with only 2 Vindicator.
Yeah, good news for humans is that his deck doesn't rely on it. Though, with this the double healing Mystic Star, I always feel so bad playing like a 2/3 when you know they're going to get a Taskmaster back. You're like, oh, hey, enjoy this free trade. Goodbye, my little 2/3. You served well. Not that well. Goodbye.
Yeah, and the positioning here from humans is interesting too, because in principle, Pierru could play the Tusk Boar sort of diagonally down right
to the bottom right of the healing mystic, and then block it off.
Exactly, and then humans wouldn't even have a way to clear it. I mean, he drew double blood tier, but
are they going to move that forward? We just talked about it, but it seems like they're going to fly in the face of our conventional wisdom and let humans have the opportunity to clear that task bar if they want.
Yeah, I think this is maybe playing around Vindicator, because if Pierru doesn't put the Tusk Boar there, then humans can walk down to Vindicator on the mana tile, kill either the Tusk Boar or the Mana Forger, and then run the Vindicator away. Now, if he wants to do that same thing, the Vindicator is going to be stuck on the bottom mana tile, and Pierru will be able to clear it next turn.
Yeah, so there we go. And honestly, like, this task has already done a pretty reasonable job. Like, it's not the end of the world for it to go away. Yeah, you know, you're making the gamble that your opponent does have something they want to do with that mana tile, but that's a pretty reasonable gamble. It pays off a good amount of the time.
Yeah, you know, in these kinds of matchups where the opponent is running a lot of healing, it can be really good to count the healing. So, I mean, two Mystic is not that much, but you know, it's getting there, right? This is the beginning of a situation where humans might end up spending most of his healing, and then when you have not very much healing in your deck at some point, then you can be really vulnerable, because now all the damage is going to stick a lot more.
Okay, what do you think about this positioning of the second blood tier?
Yeah, so I mean, this is humans not wanting Pierru to play something on the mana tile and then have the 2 mana left over to play something else. So, that's that's pretty.
That's a nice Ghost Lightning. Because I probably would go for the full surround there. I just like blocking off my ability where possible.
Yeah, it can be important to stay close to the Songhai General, because you don't have that many ways to deal with artifacts. So if they run away and play a Blood Rage Mask, you generally want to be in their face already. I think in that specific situation, there wasn't really that much that the Pierru could accomplish by retreating. Maybe backlining a threat could be dangerous, but that many threats that they can really backline. You know, it's basically just the Mana Forger in their deck that wants to be backlined. So, not a. Yeah, I don't think humans was that worried about Pierru running away there.
Yeah, and humans are actually spending a lot of time on that turn for a pretty small decision of whether they wanted to play the Emerald Rejuvenator on the mana tile here.
Yeah, I mean, especially with open deck lists, it can be really tricky, because humans has to look at the deck list and think, if I let them play it on the mana tile, like what can they do with that mana? And humans came to the conclusion that the answer is not much, right? That already Pierru doesn't have that many minions, and I don't know, maybe they can like play a Chakri and then inner focus it and then have like an extra mana left over, but it doesn't matter that much. And sort of forcing Pierru to not hit the Rejuvenator would be nice, and of course Pierru is probably more scared of humans ramping, so it actually is a very difficult decision. How you want to sort of push your opponent into play, and like what difficult decisions you want them to be able to make. So I don't blame humans for spending a lot of time there in a serious match.
Yeah, no, definitely. You should consider those. Like, you get 90 seconds a turn, like, definitely spend it. Pierru like took their turn reasonably quickly, and they did not do much. They've like spent their last turn playing just the Ghost Lightning, and this the one they just took just playing a Phoenix Fire. it's times like this where, you know, it's interesting to speculate about what's in their hand. Why are they playing these so conservative turns?
Yeah, I mean, I think they must be setting up for just a huge amount of burst. You know, maybe their hand is something like Chakri Mana Forger, Inner Focus Heaven's Eclipse, something like this, right? Maybe with the Blood Rage Mask, and they're trying to just they can Songhai can totally do 19 damage out of hand, but maybe not with an Archon on board. And so I think that was sort of the idea.
Yeah, if you want to beat Songhai, stick those Archons in your deck. You won't regret it. It's a good card. And chances all over Songhai.
Yeah, I mean, Pierru has a hard time dealing with Archon. They're not running OBS on Express Seal, so they basically have to kill with damage, and it's really, really, really hard for them to win through an Archon. I mean, of course, Mana Forger does counterbalance that, but yeah, it is absolutely not great.
Yeah, the problem with like Onyx Bear Seal is there's so many targets that it doesn't really do much against. Like, there is a couple of like big minions being played, and you know, obviously, you can probably expect Archon gets played a lot. But if you're playing this kind of aggressive deck, I usually just hope that I can get a good juxtaposition. I don't think this is what I'd call a good juxtaposition.
Indeed, yeah. This Jux has unfortunately done nothing. I think Pierru's just sort of emptying their hand at this point. They want the Phoenix Fire from the Fox. Yeah, often a totally viable strategy can be to do enough damage in sort of the early turns of the game that by the time Archon comes down, you know, you Jux it away, and then even though your spells cost one more, they're low enough that you can kind of get there, especially if they spent 6 mana doing this instead of healing. But that's not the case here. Humans is a very high life total, and just really cruising. So it's tough for Pierru here.
Yeah, I was wondering if they're even going to play this Metamorphosis to just deny the Phoenix Fire. I don't think it's bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of had nothing else to do with the turn, so and the only thing they'd really want to meta is maybe a Chakri that was huge, and pretty unlikely for that to happen. So this makes sense. I mean, it's kind of interesting also to see what cards Humans is playing out. Like last turn, Humans played the Blood Tear and stuff, holding it. That makes him softer to Blood Rage Mask, but he just wants more bodies on board. There are many reasons to want that. So it's tricky. You know, Humans is navigating this very well and making a lot of key decisions. And Pierru's just like, this is over. I mean, I agree. It was over. Humans recovered from a very bad start very, very, very convincingly.